Hello and welcome to the Lake Howard plein air painting demo. My name is Lee. Just getting the drawing in here. We've sped it up and we've increased the contrast so you can see the pencil lines. Now to the right of center will be our focal point. So we're leading the eye back to the focal point. So we've drawn and planned it this way. So let's go paint it that way. Now getting started here, we're going to get into some alizarin crimson and cadmium red and make a nice pink. We have a pinky sky, and that always makes me happy to have a little color in the sky. Set that brush aside and you can grab another flat brush. This is ultramarine blue. It's my only blue I use in plein air. And get a range where it's not directly that blue, it's just going to be a combination of what I just mixed into it. So going forward, you're going to notice that that's how I achieve a harmony, is putting other colors that I just mixed into the next color. So painting that stroke right on the horizon line, right behind the trees really, and pick up that brush that's preloaded. You noticed it's a little bit weak, so rich in a little bit and just let that mingle right into that ultramarine blue mixture and just help it a little bit. Watercolor kind of does what it wants, but you can help it along in some ways. Grab that same blue brush again and just get rid of some of those drips. Now I noticed in the sky that it's got some deeper warmth, so I'm going to go with some yellow ochre and put that in there. Just maybe correct a little bit, put a little more red in, the pinky mixture in. And then this next one is going to be kind of a combination of those to go above. And now the sky is eventually going to, of course, turn blue, but I just got a very weak mixture of yellow ochre to put at the top. So we're going to keep this color harmony throughout this morning kind of glow harmony. Now we'll move on to the background trees, and you're going to see me mix a few puddles. And what I'm doing right now is really just trying to get within the range that I'm seeing. And it isn't always very clear at first when you put those first elements in the scene. So I'm trying to see, how cool it is, how warm it is, just kind of get in a range. And so the best way I've found to do is when you feel like you're sort of getting close, you can just do a little test like that. And I can see that that's way too blue, so I'm reaching for uh, cadmium yellow and test again. Seems right. I'll go with it. And now the next challenge, I think, is to try to be random. Um, Looking at what's back there isn't always going to help you. You have to intentionally uh, make yourself think randomly. Put your marks down in a random way. Seeing little bits, flicks of red back there, which complement those pinks we put in the sky. And going forward, here is a little bit of a mistake. So I thin that brush out and see I lost the consistency. And even after all this time, I don't know what it is, but it just happened. So eventually I figured this out. But I wanted to keep these mistakes in here because it's that I really think it'll help you realize that even if you can paint a scene and you're pretty consistent, you still just do things that are just not helpful. So showed you that, and then I put a little bit of white gouache in. I'm just more testing right now. I'm not really trying to paint big areas with it. I just saw like kind of a little fuzziness to the background that made me do that. Some things it's kind of not explainable. Sometimes the things I do. So I'm seeing a little green there, and again, I've painted this scene before, so I know that a lot of light is going to come on those background trees. So I'm kind of anticipating that. So it's a little bit of a cheat on this. So don't think I've just not painted here before. I've painted here many, many times. So I know exactly how the sun's going to come up and how it's going to interact with most things. Um, so now I'm not really putting a lot of shadows in, you notice, because it is background, and I don't want that to compete in any way with our focal point. So it's there, it looks okay, and now I just cleaned that brush and just wrung it out, and now it's a damp brush, and I'm just kind of getting rid of that harsh line there because it is distance. And here is yet another little bit of a mistake. I think I was just curious right now just to see. By the way, those grasses that I'm putting in right now, right there in the, if you look in the reference, I've actually moved those over. So that golden color, I just kind of wanted to see what range that was going to be in. So I'm abandoning that right now, that idea of going with that. And now I'm going to go for the water. And we'll paint that all the way down to our toes. So trying to find again the range. Um, I almost made a boo-boo again because I it looks like I'm about to paint with that, and that is way too muddy of a blue for what I'm seeing. And so I corrected that. Over the years, I've been able to sort of hold myself back more. It doesn't always work, but I'm getting this is important. I'm getting a lot of the water out right now, and I'm just barely skimming the surface. If you can stop this and zoom in and see how that's broken, that'll help you to see how light I'm actually touching the the paper. So a little bit richer version of that, very light as well. And I'm really trying hard to just make a little bit of a broken edge. Um, it just makes it look like water. I mean, you can make this smooth too. It totally works. But for this painting, I just felt like it just needed some um, interest, I guess. Now I'm switching gears here to get into that glow that mimics the sky, maybe just a little bit uh, dirtier, um, meaning a little grayed off, not so bright, and just barely skimming the surface. I didn't even get enough paint. That's how I'm just kind of really wanting to just create those little on the high spots, hit the high spots, and then it leaves little flicks of white. So on the overlap there into the bluish part, I'm not really painting, I'm just sopping up more the overage. Now I feel okay about that. And this next little part is maybe a little bit confusing. It might confuse you, that is, because I'm not really seeing what I'm about to do. It's just something I'm doing to help lead the eye into the focal point. So it's almost like maybe the wind was blowing or something and creating a little bit of something in the water, and I'm staggering them towards the focal point. So if you remember back in the intro, you see the focal point's going to be right there where those weeds are, the dark part. And now, if you look at the reference, right up to your toes, it gets like a purpley kind of thing, which is really, again, the combination of what we've already painted. But there's a dull purple. I'm even putting some yellow ochre into the purple to sort of dull it down and making sure there's not too much water and just scraping that in very gently. And this actually didn't go that well. I, I'm doing okay, but I noticed that that's very harsh, like where the white part is or lighter part, which is really just the paper. Um, so this is a bit of a struggle. It eventually works out, and also all of those grass bits are going to be painted very dark over top of this. So it's a little bit of grace there. So I'm thirsty brush. I've just wrung the brush out and got the moisture as much as I can out to sop up maybe a little bit of that. So too many marks going on right now for my. I don't like when this happens, but it's just a struggle. So out comes the paper towel now. It's about to come out, and here it comes. Paper towel time. And I know that doing this is going to lighten that enough when it dries that it'll be fine. It won't be so abrupt. So, you know, if you were to try to paint that same thing from the top of where the trees, right below the background trees, all the way down in a smooth way, actually, it might be easier for you if you're just starting to not do this broken water sort of look. It just goes smooth, right? So more water in your mixes. So right now we're going to move on. I've noticed that the light has come on those trees. Basically, I call it a bush. I think it really is a tree, but it's just so round that I always call round things bushes. Um, but I'm going to try to get in the range of the lights of that. Okay, so that's not going to change too much. The color of it's not going to change. You can see that if you take a peek in the background, you see that the sky is still pink. So this is what's going to make this painting work. It's still pink in the sky, and then you have that light coming on there. So this is what's important about getting this down first, right? So I'm going to put a little bit down, judge it, make sure that that is the range, the warmth. What you're seeing right now is Mr. Paper Towel coming back out because of those background trees. I just basically rubbed them out so I could get that light in there. So I think I've changed my mind a little bit, and I'm gonna grab this paper towel and sop up a little bit of what I've done and switch to this oil painter's brush. And what this does is it lets me kind of dig into the colors and get a little bit thicker uh, version of the color. And I'm just sort of testing, even scraping back again some of that, what we did before, and just trying to make sure that it seems like it's a long time on this little part, but it's just to ensure that it's accurate before I move on to the other areas. So right now I'm going to try to get this shadow side of that bush in correctly, and it's going to take some judging against what we just did. So in watercolor, we do the lights first and then we put the darks in, and we can judge the darks by how the lights are. So does that look like light hitting it? Well, maybe looks okay. The range looks okay because watercolor is going to, of course, dry lighter. So you do have to keep that in mind. You almost want to paint it where it's a little bit of a mistake in a way, like it just looks sort of wrong, but it'll usually dry back lighter. So going forward with the shadow, I'm going to use this homemade brush. It's the straps that you get at Lowe's to tie down your cargo, and I make them into brushes. You should try it sometime. It's pretty cool. It's economical as well. Um, you can see that I've got this, I call it my trusty brush, and it's got the best point on it ever. It's a comb brush, but it has a point on it that just lets you get these tiny little details that you just can't get with another, like a soft brush. So it's not really an oil painter's brush. It's probably like an acrylic brush maybe, but it's great for these little details. So I'm just dipping into even some white. I'm noticing a couple of little areas that have like kind of uh, a frosty, I just call it frosty look to the greens. Maybe it's a Florida thing, I'm not really sure, but it seems like dipping into a teeny bit of gouache is about the only way that you can achieve that look. So continuing on, trying to make an interesting shape because that shape is going to be against that light. That's a finished look. There's not going to be any other painting back there in the background. So this has to look convincing, interesting, all those things. And going a little even to the dark darks within that bush, and might be a little too dark. You always, it's always good, even if you're not going to be a, you know, YouTube. This is like my second YouTube video ever, and I've painted for a long time. Just to see yourself paint, and you're just like, no, why? Why are you doing that? It'll help you. It actually is helping me after all these years seeing myself paint. I'm like, why would you do that? But going forward, just trying to find some different colors within the mass, not necessarily change the value, but just make it interesting. The more I paint, the more I'm just after. I'm seeking out interesting things in the picture. Um, so working on those trees, there's going to be even more light eventually. And so again, I'm sort of painting forward and an anticipation of more light coming on that area. I'm working in some darks and trying to see how that can enhance that little bush, um, with that really dark spot right next to the lightest part of the trees. So that bush really kind of represents, in a way, of the trees, okay, not the grass that's eventually going to happen, but of the trees, that's kind of like the lightest part. And so it's again, that's in the focal point. I want to kind of carefully draw it, make sure that it's convincing as we can do. And you can see our sky back there is starting to lighten up. That pink is eventually going to yield to blue. So I'm trying to get all this in and judge all these light sides of the color while that pink is in the sky. Because I don't want to lose that harmony that we've got there. And using my homemade brush again, I have two sides to it. One is kind of shorter, one is like when you really want to go nuts. And now I think I'm just going to mix up some dark like that and just pick through. I'm looking at my subject, I'm looking at all those little, it's kind of, you're painting it in reverse, right? So painting the darks, shadow parts of those trees now. And just making it interesting. Just noticing I got a little carried away. It's going to be lighter than that, so paper towel is your friend in watercolor. Now it's time for the trusty brush again. It's mixing some variations of the green, a little bluer, a little warmer, a little darker, and again, just making it as interesting as you possibly can make a clump of trees and a big, huge, round bush. Um, so adding a little gouache to it because I've noticed that as the light is starting to come over, you're getting those frosty sort of look to some of those plants down there. They're not really trees, they really actually are bushes, what I'm painting right now. And just touching that color, because I had that color, I try to spread around. When I kind of come up with a new combination of a color in the scene, I bounce it around. And that's going to give you, if you just sort of, I do it intuitively now, but I used to really try to make myself think about doing it, make sure that the harmony is spread throughout. So every time you mix a new variation, see where you can work that in, and you'll be amazed at what your harmony in your pictures can do. So now we've moved on, and those trees there at the top, and I've got another version. So this is also a homemade brush. That's an ink pen. And what I've done is I've taken some of that rope from Lowe's, cargo rope, and put that into an ink pen, and then back and forth with the trusty brush to get some interesting. These are going to be against the sky, so hey, make them interesting. Don't just paint like I used to do. Just paint a circle. I mean, that's like you've got a little bit of time. Try to make it a good drawing, a good, interesting shape. So I'm telling myself that. So um, so now the light side of the trees is coming in. This is it's not really that green, but I'm kind of cheating that in because I want the harmony to happen here. And hopefully I've achieved that at the end, making all these little tiny decisions about colors and spreading that different color around. Even though I see a lot of red in those trees, there are those darks, and I'm making sure that I put enough green in to um, match what I'm seeing basically. So putting in some of the tree trunks. You always feel better once you get a tree trunk in, so it doesn't look like it's floating up there in the air somewhere. And this trusty brush even lets me put in the tiniest little branches. And it doesn't run because it doesn't hold hardly any water. So your mixtures have to, with that type of brush, I'm using it very, very, very thick paint. As far as watercolor thick. Okay. So a little bit more. When I feel like I'm getting too bogged down in little tiny details, I'll grab the homemade brush and just like smack it around a little bit because it makes your brain go out of that detail mode, and you just can't, you have never know what this brush is going to do, which is kind of the point. So I'm just trying to get an interesting shape based on reality, right? Based on what I'm seeing, but I'm letting the brush dictate, where tiny little branches are going to go. So I don't really have to think about it. I just use that brush, and it sort of loosens you up. You should try it. So I want to leave this area, and I think I remember going, I just got to get out of this little trees. But until, this is kind of my rule, my self-imposed rule, that I don't move on from an area until I feel like it's getting hit by light. So do I have that feeling looking at it? And then if I do, I can move on. If I don't, I will stay and keep working at it until, I just sort of glance at it and go, you know what that feels like it's lights hitting it. And then I can just sort of release myself and go on to another passage. Now, as that sun's really, really hitting now, it's getting more intense, and you notice the sky back there, it's turned blue. So this is a little testy doing this, but I'm just making sure that we have the enough chroma intensity back there on that bush, and I think that we're good. Okay, so I've just noticed, look at that in the thing, that little reddish grass, that one little blade or so is getting hit by light. That means that as the sun comes up, that's going to get really, really hit by that. So I'm kind of going for that now. Just going to get in the range of um, what is that going to look like? So it's like a reddish type of grass that sort of matches the red I saw in the trees up there. Um, and so I cleared off a spot, and I'm just testing out um, what's that gonna be like. I can only have that little teeny bit to judge by, but if I'm gonna move forward with it, I'm gonna make a decision now and have like a whole passage of that grass towards the bottom. I think it'll really have a good harmony with the pink that was in the sky earlier. So I've just kind of felt that in, just uh, move off of it, just kind of almost like a note, because I have other issues. And the issue right now is look at how much sun has come on that little area in the middle. And that thing is like glowing now. So I feel like I need to go for that now. Might have been a little bit of a mistake to go with that bright. Remember that mistake at the beginning where that was actually the right color for the sky. So this is a little bit intense what I'm doing right now. In hindsight, like I said, you should record yourself if for no other reason to see all the mistakes that you make. But I think it works out, but it's just a little too intense for me, to be honest. Um, well, we'll go with it because we already painted it. It's nothing I can do now, right? So I did, looks like I'm starting to figure it out a little bit because I just put more water with that, and now I'm reaching into a grayer version of it. So good boy. Um, Now I'm gonna mix a cooler, hopefully not too cool, green that's gonna kind of fuzz up into those stalks. Not even sure what that is. It's like a grass of some sort. Trying to be random, trying to just give it as much variety as I possibly can. Glancing over, uh, squinting my eyes, making sure I'm only painting what I see in a squint. It's not, it's easier said than done. But as I develop this area, I'm realizing that it's probably more correct in the end to just go ahead and have that intensity there, um, because if you can't see it yet, but once the scene goes down where I'm using my brush right now, that's on the same plane. As a matter of fact, it's it it's not in reality, but I'm painting it on the same plane technically as the clump of trees on the right. So right now I'm just kind of I'm getting myself kind of almost mentally ready to start painting those grasses because I know in the focal point, those marks will, you can't undo them, right? So I need to almost warming up right now, painting random sort of gesture type marks. And I do notice a little bit, and so I switched into more of a hotter green that represents the lily pads that are there. So when the sun was down, it wasn't on them. They turned very, very blue. And so now that the sun is raking across there, um, I needed to represent them in that light. So we're going to move on now very shortly with this trusty brush and start to get in a couple of these shadows in the focal point area. So here I've moved the scene and you can see that grass. It's so exciting. I'm trying to hold back and not paint all that right at the moment, but that grass that's getting hit there is so tempting right now. I'm just trying to make sure that I don't go into it too early because I don't know how much of it is going to get hit. I'm thinking that whole little strip, but we'll see. So right now I'm painting the shadow side of that warm kind of pinky kind of grass. I'm not sure what the names. I apologize. I really don't know the names of some of this foliage. Just paint it. Just if it looks interesting, put it in. Doesn't so much matter. No one's going to ask you like what kind of tree that is. Hopefully. Oh, stretching the paper a little bit. I've noticed as the sun comes up, paper's starting to get a buckle in it. So I use those clamps and reclamp it. Used to use tape all the way around, but what would happen is the sun would melt the glue of the tape and I would have like a mess. So Florida, you just have to do different things. Now, I've noticed that grass. I can't hold back anymore. It's so exciting. That's the exciting part to me of painting is when you're sort of surprised by uh, something. Because I think maybe those are in a winter sort of mode. Maybe that's why they're so red. We're just coming out of winter, of course. This is it's hard to tell in Florida like where you are actually at. But I'm going to even lighten with the paper towel. Mr. Paper Towel's coming out. Now that looks like if I can pull this off, it would look really, really cool. To have that little bit of light grasses that are really matching, somewhat matching the tone, the color harmony of the sky. These are the things that make plein air artists excited. So now I think I'm finding the range of the shadow as it's going down into shadow. I want to keep the intensity of the red up. This is the focal point. So might not have mentioned this before, but your best drawing, your highest contrast, and your brightest colors all go in the focal point. And then you gradually lead out away from the focal point and you just paint it down, so to speak, where you're just doing less intense, less detail in your drawing. So it's kind of like a wave going out from the focal point where it gets just less descript, less color intensity. So that's what's going in through my mind right now as I paint out to the edges. Now I'm seeing some light hit some of those greens just a little bit and just kind of seeing what range. It's probably not going to stay like what I just did, um, but I just want to see what range we're in right now for the lights of the greens because there are mixed in with that reddish color, there's greens that get hit by light as well. So clean the brush, kind of get a new kind of tone where I'm mingling into that red, the greens that are going to be hit by light. Spotting color around. So some of these strokes, just so you know, are more about harmony than what you're actually seeing or what I'm actually seeing. And of course, the reference photo is like all photos. The darks are way too dark. It's when I'm looking at that scene, my those darks aren't nearly like that. As a matter of fact, they're more like my painting than they are in the photo. Because we see with our eyes, the Lord made our eyes to see a range that is incredible. No camera can see it. That's why when you take a photo and you expose for the darks, the highlights get blown out, and then the opposite is true. If you expose for the highlights, the darks get pitch black, and that's just not reality. It's we're used to seeing photos, but when you're out here painting, you really have the range that I feel is necessary to make a convincing painting. So, still trying to see how far I'm going to go with those reds, um, mixing colors that are harmony, working back and forth, working some of that into over the top of greens, just making sure that it feels natural and is really based on what I'm seeing. Sometimes I do get carried away and start just tending to make up things, and I have to reel myself back in and sort of get refocus and get back on track. Now, the shadows of those get really dark right now, and trying to get the range of how dark that's going to be because we have an interesting thing happen here. Now, the reflection later will have an area in it that's really, really intensely dark. And it doesn't really work if you have other darks that are exactly like that. I know that might sound complicated. It sort of is, but in a nutshell, I'm trying to see how dark the dark spots that I really can see need to go, and then make sure that I can actually go one step darker for that reflection. Just a spot. It'll almost be black. It's not black, but it'll almost be black. So filling in some of the shadows, I'm trying to work my way down to the bottom of that clump of trees, but I just keep seeing darks that really need to be in to make it convincing. And you can see how warm that dark is. It's got a lot of red in it. And it's really important to have a warm uh, in with greens. Now, I know that people will say, and it's correct, that when there's warm light, there's cool shadows. Well, that's a relative thing, right? You need to paint what you see. And what I see is within those darks, usually there are warms and cools. So I'm making sure that the greens feel greener because I'm putting red, right? So that's the complementary of green. And it's going to definitely make it stand out and be green because it's just a very green scene. And all that red around as well, so it's kind of a harmony thing. I'm mixing a purple here and trying to come up with the beginnings of what a reflection would look like. Uh, that little strip is almost not going to be visible in the end, but I'm just kind of testing the colors to see which range I'm going to get in for the reflection. And to do that, just kind of have to experiment. I'm going to experiment on a part of the painting that's just not, that's going to be all painted over. So I'm just trying to see this little brush. It's so interesting. Yeah, I've spent I don't know how much money on brushes over the years, and here's this little plastic. These have now this is different than I guess it's maybe nylon, okay, but it's very coarse nylon. This is almost like akin to a parts cleaning brush, but it is just a little paintbrush, and it comes from the dollar store. Anyways, we'll talk about that in a little bit. So, continuing on, I'm seeing that light really come in to as far as it's gonna go, and I've already exaggerated a little bit. I can tell. Um, I hope it doesn't look too gaudy in the end, because these are the kind of things when you get excited about a little area, the decisions you make are skewed. So it's only sort of sitting here watching myself paint that I'm starting to see. I don't know, Lee, got a problem. So, anyways, I'm gonna continue on, and these marks. I've got this brush, this special sort of triangle brush. It comes to a real evil point, and it's sort of stiff in a way. And it lets you just, you can use your wrist and flick up and get the smallest little grasses you've ever seen. And also, it's got the stiffness to it that lets you dry brush. Not really using that way right now, but um, little tiny little marks. And these marks, like I said, you can't really undo it, especially if it's against the background that's finished. This is the marks. This is what you got. So got to be mindful. I keep looking at the scene. I'm looking, squinting my eyes, opening my eyes just to see, the detail. Um, the squint is to basically see the value, where I need to start and stop those real darks that I'm putting in, and the opening my eyes is to see the drawing, right? Just to actually draw accurately. You don't really want to draw with your eyes in a squint. It's probably not a good idea. So feeling my way around, I I'm really done for now with that big clump of trees. Now what I'm doing is I'm just sort of thinking about how I'm going to go into those foreground grasses, and it's just starting. It's just starting off. You can see in the reference that's about as far as I'm sort of looking into the scene. But how those connect to where the focal point is, in my opinion, very, very important in the painting. And so I'm mixing up right now a very, very dark green, red, all just throwing a bit of everything in here. And I want to get, if you can see in that photo, how dark that little area of the reflection is. And um, when I put that in, it's kind of making me nervous. I'm kind of hem-hawing a little bit. I even set it aside just to make sure, because once you get that dark of a mark on there in watercolor, it's is almost impossible to get it back up. You can scrape it, but it almost blends it into the paper even more somehow. So it's better to just hold off. So that's what I did. I'm holding off. Got the triangle brush again, and now I'm gonna commit to what that reflection is gonna look like. It's warmer than I'm just seeing it as a warmer color, meaning it has a little yellow ochre in it, uh, than the actual thing itself, right? So the might seem weird, but if you really study out there, you'll notice that the reflection usually is different tonally, and also um, warm and cool sort of difference when you look at the reflection than the actual subject. So I'm working back into that a little bit of the shadow parts of the reflection, and now I've committed. It's right or wrong. I've got see how dark that is, though. That's what I was alluding to earlier. Is that dark is representing the reflection of that very dark part in the tree clump. Okay, so that this is the rule of reflections that I've come to um, accept, and this is partially by getting it from teachers, but I still really didn't believe them until I figured it out myself, and that's always the best way. Because I can sit here and tell you all kinds of things, but until you actually experience it, that's the best way to sort of convince you that that is correct. If your subject is in light, usually, okay, usually the reflection is darker than the subject. And then the opposite is true. If your subject's in shadow, your reflection is usually lighter than the subject. That's just what I found. There probably are exceptions. If you have any exceptions that you know of, write them in the comments and let me know what you think. But that's just my experience. It doesn't mean that you can, you know, put it in a white paper that it's 100% correct. Um, it's just experience. So this is a little bit of a hard part. I would say that every painting seems to have kind of a hard part. And the hard part to me is looking at all those little flicks of super bright yellowy green highlights on those bushes. I mean the foreground grass. It's not grass. So this is like an aquatic type of plant. I have no idea what it's called, but it's not a lily pad, and it's not. They're leaves, and so those little highlights things, it just drives you nuts because I don't really want to paint it just like that, but you almost have to get close because it looks horrible if you don't. So what you're seeing, I don't freak out. I was freaking out, but I'm trying to paint just, if you can look at the reference and just ignore any darks at all and just look at what that light color is on the end. I just decided that I was going to paint the whole thing in the lights, and then later on I splatter in the darks. It would seem to be the only economical way to go about this area because it's just the idea of sitting there hand putting in little tiny dots did not appeal to me. It's hot, it's humid, the sun is moving. So this is sort of working. Um, as soon as it starts feeling like speckles, I stop doing this. But and you see, I'm trying to. That's what I would. That's what I was talking about. Is just poking it, endlessly poking at it to make those spots. So there's certain things in watercolor that, or any painting really, that just annoy me, and that's one of them. Is just having to sit there and poke endlessly just to make a texture of something. So that's where techniques come in. If you have any better ideas once you see, now watch all of this, okay, and then like judge it hard and then tell me. So look at the end result, okay? Don't write your comment right now. Right, let's let Lee paint it first. But if you have a better idea, let's make the comments section like a resource and have artists that are experienced, whether in oil or acrylic or even watercolor or gouache, um, put in the comments what you would do with this area. Um, Now, in watercolor, we paint the lights first, so that's almost a given. But other than that, I could have let it dry a little bit before I splattered, but that yellow was driving me bonkers, so I had to kill it. So now I'm kind of fed up with it. So whenever I get anxious, I just get out this ugly brush, homemade brush, what am I calling it? Lee's Amazing Tree Brush and foliage. I could put as well. So it just does good. It's just so random and unpredictable that that's how I'm feeling about the scene at the moment. So I just grab it and start slathering on paint with it. So these are going to be the lights, not as intense, obviously. So I'm painting in the lights of all that foliage. Um, Eventually, I do come back and put the shadow side, the shadows into them while they're wet. Went a little bit dark. I probably am now into shadow of them, where those were in complete shadow. Now, this little part, I'm seeing all these red, again, red that's in the sky, red that's in the little the trees, red that's in those foreground grass, those grasses in the focal point. Now are going into, amazingly, I see them in the aquatic plants. So the only way I could think to do it was get this big mop brush and beat it to death with the against the palette knife. It's kind of an old idea. I don't see a lot of artists doing this anymore. I used to do it a long time ago. Everything splattered everything, so I still do it. It still works relatively well. It's better than sitting there, right, making all of those dots, because they're just going to look contrived anyways. So this gives you a randomness that is very appealing, eventually appealing in the picture. Now I'm trying to ease in. There's trees, so you're not seeing in the reference, but there's trees to the right of all of this scene that you're seeing, and they're casting shadows into, across those grasses. And so I'm trying to work them in a way that doesn't look. It's always hard to paint shadows on top of little leafy bits, right? Because this is a 2D thing, and you have to sort of make that texture. So right now I'm putting some shadow into those grasses when it's wet, so it sort of bleeds in to it nicely, smoothly. Putting in little details where I feel like it needs it. Squint my eyes and then open my eyes to paint it. Squint my eyes to look, and then trying to only put those things in that I see in a squint, right? If I notice little dark bits, squinting can also help you recognize patterns or see patterns in things simply. It eliminates a lot of those little tiny little details where you can sort of begin to see the bigger pattern. It's very useful. I think squinting, I didn't say this, I think it's Morgan Weisling that said squinting is like the biggest sort of secret that can instantly make your art better. Like if you just squint at your subject and only paint what's in a squint, like only what you see in a squint, your art will eventually will immediately be better off. That's a paraphrase, but that's really what he was saying. It's true. Morgan Weisling is my favorite artist. I feel like of all time. He's a believer. He's a Christian, and he's just such a great teacher. I have some of his videos, and he doesn't make very many of them. He's a very busy person, but just the ones that he did is so useful, even for plein air painting. He and his wife actually go plein air painting to enhance their eye for values. In one of those DVDs that he had, he showed them plein air painting. So as you can see, I've gotten the palette knife out and I'm now scraping those little flowers or little lighter parts of the aquatic plants. And I think I do a lot more of that, so I apologize for the repetition, but I just really want you to see what you have to go through to get a halfway decent picture in plein air. It's just a lot of back and forth. I think with any good piece of art, right? You're not just going to get it in one go, usually. And so little highlights. This is all a result of that ever growing sunlight. It's just as the sun gets intense, it's hitting more things in the scene. Now my finger was a teeny bit. It wasn't really even wet when I did that. I just wanted to sort of get that smooth, because that is water after all. It's not like it has a lot of texture in it. It's just a reflection. And right now, I am thinking about one thing, and that is lunch. No, um, I am thinking about leading the eye. So those, it's actually happening in the real scene, but I'm making sure that I don't make any marks that lead you away. Okay, so there are marks there that I think could lead the eye away, and I'm just trying to avoid those. That's all. It's not really a lot more complicated than that. Now this is what I've been waiting for, and that is the reflection of the bush. And I'm trying to decide. I'm a little nervous right now because if I don't get this tone right, um, going back and forth, I'm thinking, well, this is the shadow side. So I'm accommodating that those are grasses, right? So I'm using the edge of this wonderful brush. This is a synthetic goat hair, and it's just an incredible brush. There's a set of them, and they're really not that expensive if you want to maybe indulge. Go on Amazon to try to find them. It's the brand Balic. I'm not sure what that means. They're great brushes. So I'm trying to make sure I'm, accurate how far I go over. This brush can actually do a tiny little line. And I'm putting a little more movement in when you're painting reflections. It's always better to put a little movement, kind of as if the water was moving a little, in other words, um, than a smooth kind of thing like it is right now. That water's like glass right now. Now, here's the opportunity. I was going to tell you about this brush. This is a plastic dollar store brush. The beauty of it is it'll last forever. It'll be here way longer than you or I. That's one thing. The next thing is it will blend things in watercolor or other mediums too without picking up any paint. So, in other words, it doesn't hold any water at all. All it's going to do when you use it, very lightly, but it will move the paint around and mix and mingle the paint without actually altering or pushing. You know, you're not ever going to really paint with it in this context, right? But I just put a little drop. I needed a little darker there. I can work that right into that reflection with this little plastic brush. So go to the dollar store, see if you can find one. It's not the animal hair, right? This is just, I think it's like probably nylon, and it's just fantastic. For $1, you too could own a magic blending brush. So there I measured down to see. I did notice that there, amongst all of those speckles, there is the reflection of the top trees. I think in the end, it was a good decision to put that in. Um, Makes a little more sense because it's actually there, but it just, visually makes more sense. A little tedious. I'm painting around some of the lighter parts, so I'm just making sure. So, noticing I didn't put the dark in dark enough. Um, and boy, am I rubbing that a lot. So that's a soft brush. That little brush is great too. It's part of a set. It's very, very soft. I think they're really acrylic brushes. It's great for watercolor. It is very soft but stiff at the same time. So, kind of getting down to the nitty gritty here. And again, Mr. I need to think of a good name for this thing. It's just, it's the cheapest that handles like bent permanently. I don't know. It just came that way. But it's just so fantastic. So, back and forth here. There's going to be a lot of this little back and forth, adding little touches. Um, and here I'm putting a little bit of reds in, a little bit of color just to harmonize with the rest of the painting. And looking at that reflection, it looks a little bit confusing. So I think I'm going to work it out, but there is a little bit of confusion to the, because you have the light in the grass or the aquatic plants, and then you have the light side of that bush. So something has to give, right? So maybe darker. I don't know. I'm judging it after the fact. Can't really change it now. But okay, so now I'm getting very, very close to wrapping it up. But to wrap it up with the focal point, I'm going to use my little synthetic bristle brush. This is a very old brush. I don't even think they make this anymore. But it just allows you to dig in, really, really dig in, much like the other oil painter's brush, to really get some paint, some very thick, very dark strokes. Dig into that paint, and even putting it on is great too because it holds like zero water. So what ends up happening is the dry brush kind of it just has a nice feel to it. So don't be afraid to try oil painting brushes, any kind of brush really, um, to enhance your watercolor paintings. So you'll notice the stiff brushes really become very useful, because they just don't hold water, and so you make marks that are very organic, broken edges. So I'm adding those in, little darks, little touches to just randomize. I'm really trying to force my brain right now to just random squint, look at the scene, identify a pattern that might be kind of useful to you, right? So you just use things in the scene. You don't just paint right what's in front of you just as is. Never do that anymore. I did at first. It's okay at first, but eventually you'll just get to where you can just use the scene. It's like human Photoshop. You just move things around. You orchestrate, right? It's like a piece of music. And as we keep orchestrating our symphony, um, we're coming to the end, but these little touches, um, I mean, you could probably turn the video off right now and you'd be fine with your learning if you are learning anything, but you would have missed this. So, my MAC synthetic squirrel pinstriping brush is coming out. And I saved this to the end because I like doing it, number one. And number two, it's just the finest lines. It's just a joy to paint with this brush because, I mean, you can literally get like a one hair thick foliage. Um, so I'm mixing this up. I'm making sure this is right. This is a pretty bright, this is going to be hit by sunlight. And I do see them there. There's just maybe a few hit by sunlight in reality, but I'm kind of enhancing this because this again is the focal point, and I'm not going to go too crazy, but I do um, put them in with a little bit of fear is happening right now because if you make a horrible mark with this, there's no undo button. So I'm looking also just thinning that out and make a nice little uh, reflection. Now, pay attention to how I handle the end of this reflection. Okay, this is just something I didn't always do. Just one day I just sort of did it and it just worked. So and that is the back end of a brush. See that brush there? Um, Go play that again if you want to see. You can only do it once, but you put the things down, whatever it is, if it's grasses like that, and then you just rub it back and forth, and it makes it look like a reflection. So technical, but not. It's just a simple way to do it. I've just found I've spent so much time trying different ways and ruining paintings that I'm saving you from ruining them. So that's just the way to, it's kind of a safer way to do it rather than like a brush or something. Just the round end of a brush. Make sure it's nice and smooth. So I'm continuing to add a little bit more opaque uh, strokes with this tiny little brush. This is a great little brush too. It's a zero round, and it's Sable Tech. Sable Tech is a mimic of actual animal hair. I don't use any animal hair, but it's really it's actually better than an animal hair brush in a lot of ways. It's more durable, and it doesn't lose its shape. It has like a kind of like a memory. If it ever does get out of shape, which it really hasn't on me, but other brushes I've had, you can put them in boiling water for a couple seconds, and the synthetic brushes will kind of have a memory, and they'll sort of come back into shape um, when you put them in boiling water. It's a little secret. See, you would have skipped that part had you turned this video off. So right now, I'm I'm really to the end. When I get out the palette knife and start making little scrapes, um, it's just time to go home and eat a bagel or something. So right, you're just gonna see if you want to turn it off, you really actually could now. I'm just scraping, just testing little areas, see if I can get like a little scratch. Most of it's dried up too much to do that now. I used to do a lot more of the scratching weeds in and stuff, but I only really do it when I don't know, I just feel like it really needs it. I don't do it just to do it. I do it if I feel like it would enhance the picture. And that did absolutely nothing. That's completely dry over there. You can spray it with a little bit of a spritz of um, a spray bottle. Let it sit for a second, and then if the paint is thick enough, you can get some scrapes once the paint is actually dried. Um, but spritzing too much will cause you way more problems than it would ever solve. So if you're newer at this, I'm done. So coming to the end here, I like to turn it black and white, the final, kind of put a little digital mat around it in Photoshop and turn it black and white and just look and see how did you do with your values. And it always is very revealing of how your drawing was, how you understood the values in color. Now, let me know in the comments what you think. And did you learn anything? Did you think I covered what I needed to cover for plein air? And just let me know if you try plein air for the first time or you're a veteran. Always think of the comments as a opportunity to share what you know and what you've gained to help other people. Okay, as we come to the end of our little video here, I just want to leave you with a thought from Numbers in the Old Testament. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord smile upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord show you his favor and give you his peace. And that peace is through our Lord Jesus Christ. God bless you all. Bye now.